I was sharing my screen. Okay, now we're recording. Okay.
All right.
Welcome to the Patriot Perspective. My name is Gregory Lykov, and I'm joined here with my co-host Ofer Adar.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to September 2nd's rendition of the Patriot Perspective. A lot of interesting news to get into today, as we've been missing over the weekend. We'll get into the relocation of the Space Force headquarters to Alabama. We'll look at Trump's recent press conference. He's been on a recent hiatus, actually, so he's now coming out with some new comments in relation to the
He's
cartels.
alive.
Yes, he's actually alive despite the social media rumors. So we'll look at his statements and we'll talk about the National Guard. So lots to get into today.
Yeah, definitely. And just before we start, we want to say thank you. We have received such a big plethora of support this past weekend and a new influx of subscribers. So thank you so much. We're very thankful for those who are subscribed to our channel, like, follow, and comment as always. And let's get into it. So, Ofer, just to start off, I wanted to get your thoughts on the press conference that occurred about 30 minutes ago. It literally just ended. And that's where
Mhm.
Trump was speaking. Uh, and he said he would have to give a big announcement. And his big announcement was that the Space Force headquarters were moved outside of DC. So how big of an announcement is this? And does this actually matter?
Well, I think even though it's not necessarily the biggest deal, I do still support the initiative and the idea behind it because we have a lot of federal agencies that are always based out of Washington, D.C., because naturally that's the political center, the political hub for our elites. And so, at least with the Space Force, it was there in D.C., then it was moved to Colorado. Now it's being moved to Alabama, which is something that's extremely positive because we need to start investing in other states that are on the periphery, wherein there are no federal agencies based. There's no opportunity for people to receive employment in those areas. So it will improve the economy over there. It will increase the job market for the people living there. It'll bring in new people as well. So yeah, all in all, amazing for smaller towns, for rural areas. So I'm very happy for them. And no, it's not worthy of like a special announcement. But if you start changing the policy in relation to all the other federal agencies, let's say we move the FBI headquarters away from the DC, Virginia, Arlington metropolitan region where all of those bases are located, that's actually a pretty big deal. And I support that. It's a part of
Yeah,
draining the
definitely.
swamp, actually.
Yeah, definitely. And to add on, having any kind of differentiation, physical differentiation between the capital and another sector of government is a very big deal. For example, let me talk about New York City. So New York City is quote unquote the financial capital of the United States or the world, right?
Yeah.
It is obviously not the capital of the United States, even though it probably contributes more to the United States than any other city does. So there's a big purpose in why the financial capital of the world isn't DC, for example, because we should be separating business and government. That goes the same with separating, let's say, government and the FBI or government and the DOJ, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
those kind of agencies are very tricky in that they have a job to naturally politicize everything they do because it's a part of the executive branch, but they also have a job to actually seek justice for the American people. So it's very confusing, and having something like the Space Force being moved outside of DC is a big step. And obviously it was in Colorado before. It was known that it would be a temporary relocation of that Space Force. Keep in mind that the Space Force existed for, I don't know, like 4 years or something, 5 years, and it already moved three times. So I don't know what's going on with that, but definitely it's interesting. But all in all, this was not the big announcement that Trump actually had to make in this press conference. And I say that because there is no way he is going to make the entire American people wait for a big announcement at 2 p.m. and then talk about the Space Force. No, the much bigger announcement was to do with his health and his liveliness. So, Ofer, why don't you discuss a little bit of the rumors that were going on for the last, I don't know, few 5 days about Trump and Trump's health?
Yeah. So since it's been almost a week since he made a public appearance live, I should preface that because he did actually conduct interviews with the media afterwards. And only now they're getting released, but they were recorded during this 1 week period where allegedly he had a health scare. what I think happened, what's most more likely is that he was on a media spree. He was involved in high-level meetings with Putin, then the EU and Zelensky. So he was probably burnt out after traveling across the country day after day and having very little sleep in the process. So for a 79-year-old man, you can't really expect him to be, indefatigable. Eventually, everybody has a breaking point, and I know that I would have collapsed far earlier than him. Now, with that being said, after about a week, you would expect to see some sort of hint of like a close up or a video being released to prove that he's fine. So I understand why people were suspicious. It's just like a radical shift in his behavior. But yeah, you see him today. He looks groggy. I would admit, just looking at him, he does look sort of tired. But you can't really expect anything else
Yeah.
given his age and given the intensity of the work. But yeah, he's answering questions in the same usual manner. So in terms of the insinuation that he had a health scare, I think there needs to be far more evidence, and the only like actual substantive evidence would be the basically the cosmetic or makeup puts on his arm to probably covering up an IV tube. That would probably be the reason why, but I think that's standard for people his age, and it
Well,
actually goes with what's being listed in the sort of drugs that he takes in his medical
yeah.
reports.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, he does have it was released a few weeks ago. I forgot the exact name of it, but it's a
Mhm.
condition in like I believe it's called tired leg syndrome or something, where your limbs are I actually have a different thing. It's not anything like that because that is actually painful, but I have a similar type of thing that is unexplained. It's not like caused by anything. It is unexplained, and it basically makes your blood vessels shrink to the like limbs, like your fingers and everything, so it kind of like colors your skin in a different way. And that's why you see like almost like a bruise like shape on his palm sometimes and all of
Yeah.
that. It's called restless leg syndrome. And what he has is actually dangerous if you don't treat it. I mean, it's being treated. Everyone in the Western world gets that treated, and no issues with that. But it also is just physically very tiring. So like it's understandable why like he has like makeup covering anywhere on his arm. That would be understandable from this tireless leg syndrome or whatever it's called. But to add on to something that you said, in which the fact that he was traveling and whatever for the last week, that does not by itself excuse any actions or taking a break. I don't believe the president can't take a break. He should not. He should not be taking a break. But what he did is he took no break this weekend. He was still working, he was still doing, he was still tweeting, and all he was doing was just not in front of media for 2 days. I mean, when we look at Joe Biden, he wasn't in front of media for weeks at a time, and no one complained. Donald Trump had a huge press conference and meeting on Thursday, I believe, with his cabinet that which was over 3 hours long and set the record for the longest ever televised continuous meeting with the president. So he is in front of media 24/7. Okay, so taking a 2 day break from media is not a big deal, and the fact that the left is trying to spin this into something like, oh, Donald Trump is not fit to serve, like, come on, that's just not like true. You think a fried potato like Joe Biden is fit to serve, but not Donald Trump. I mean, that's the left's policy right now.
Yeah, they're basically adopting the rights playbook, but doing so in a way that doesn't really stick. It doesn't really apply to Trump. So, mimicry is the best form of flattery, and that's what they're doing over here. They're adopting the talking points of the right about how Biden never made an appearance. It would take him weeks or sometimes even months before he would go out on a press conference and just off the dome talk to reporters instead of having a televised interview that was pre-recorded. So he had all these stipulations before appearing in front of the media. And even then, some of the most embarrassing questions were like, what's your favorite ice cream flavor? And yeah, it's just like the trauma of like experiencing his presidency. And now we've been just hit with this sort of shock that we have a president who's actually able to speak on his feet. And yeah, the way that he speaks isn't really the most smooth. It's, he has his own style of speaking, but you could tell that it's genuine and that it's coming from, something that's been in his head that he's developing. He's thinking off the dome. He's not coming in with like scripted thoughts. And even today he did that. So yeah, I think that even though this time over the past week, say, he hasn't really been making many media appearances, you can't expect that consistently throughout the entire 4 year period from always to be making media appearances. There will sometimes be these cascades, and sometimes there will be lulls, and the lulls have to be short, obviously, because we as people, we have to understand that our leadership is accountable and that they have an ability to communicate to us in a clear and lucid way. But yeah, there are going to be these moments, and it's been completely blown out proportion. It's actually so disingenuous when you see who it's coming from, the people that have been making excuses for the mental acuity of a president for 4 years, who at this point in time is reaching vegetable status.
Wonderful point there. And just moving on to the next conversation we have, I wanted to discuss a significant issue that we're facing and a big, interesting issue too, and that's Venezuela. We have seen that Venezuela has significantly changed over the last few years, and its drug problem has only gotten worse. And now Trump may finally be taking a stance with it. So, Ofer, why don't you give me a little bit of a rundown of what's going on in Venezuela and why it matters to the American public?
Well, the situation with Venezuela is very interesting. It started in 2002 because that's when Hugo Chavez took the presidency over there. He won, and he was very popular at the beginning. He was a socialist, self-proclaimed socialist. He was able to enrich the country via oil money, but then the prices went down during the Great Recession, and the economy just completely tanked. They were so reliant on it, and there was massive overspending. So there's huge inflation in Venezuela. Even today, there's massive inflation. He died in, I think, 2013, and his protege, who's less popular and doesn't have the same aura, Maduro, he came in and he's been holding on. He won 3 elections now, and people accuse him of cheating. There's a lot of like allegations that the results are just completely fabricated and that he's actually lost by a large amount. I don't know if it's true or not, but regardless, in 2019, Trump actually tried orchestrating a coup against him, and it failed. He tried sending in a couple of Marines and tried to mobilize forces inside of Venezuela to overthrow the government. It failed. Now he's trying to pressure them again through another vector, through the entire situation with cocaine trading. That's the issue that's being raised by Trump.
Yeah.
Trump, he designated this cartel. He's calling it a cartel. It's called the Cartel of the Suns, basically. And it's allegedly this group of people that are selling cocaine and other illicit drugs, and they're a part of the Venezuelan military and government. And so even though it's not like an actual organization, like there's not an actual group called that, it's just like an umbrella term for all of the Venezuelan officials that are using that as a vehicle for profit. And so Maduro initially in 2020 actually had an indictment filed against him for drug trafficking into the United States. And so did some other people, like his first lady's friends. They also got indicted for that. And there was a bounty placed on him for $15 million. So recently it got increased to $50 million. So, and in addition, Trump designated this Sons of or the Cartel of the Suns group as a terrorist organization, and
Wow.
so did other South American countries. And this comes in addition to Tren de Aragua being deemed that as well, in other gangs in Mexico. Now the problem is now the United States is sending in 7 warships to guard the coast of Venezuela to interdict ships that are moving in with cocaine to the United States, because one of the routes being used is from Colombia to Venezuela, then to Florida and to other locations in the
Yeah.
United States. So they've already, according to Rubio, destroyed one of those vessels, one of these small speedboats that was sending drugs across. It was just announced in the speech by Trump, actually, as well. They did this. So that would be
That's
the first ground
huge.
action.
Yeah, that is a very big deal because we
Mm.
have been seeing a lot of reports of Coast Guard specifically intercepting a lot of drug smuggling, boats, exactly like those small speedboats. Not specifically in that area, closer to the US side, but closer to California and Mexico. But
Yeah.
it's all coming from the same place. And the fact that we have other branches of military being involved in this means that Trump is ready to actually take action against this. It's a very big deal. And obviously, drugs right now, fentanyl are our biggest issues from a society standpoint because we have thousands of people all around the country on drugs that are basically on drugs for life and going to overdose and die from it. So it's a real war that we're going to have to fight against this. So, I would be very interested to see if this is actually going to work or if Trump is going to have to do something else. But definitely, it's taking the right action with such a big threat. And obviously, there has been a lot of hostility of countries that continue to buy oil from Venezuela. And the US was even under Biden considering buying oil from Venezuela, which is like insane to think about. I don't know. We will have to see. And right now, the best thing that could happen is for Trump's plan to actually work, hopefully, and delegitimize the current president of Venezuela. That would be best in my view.
Yeah, so the problems with Venezuela, they start with drugs, and you look at geopolitics, and it's way more expansive. Like the United States has a larger interest, at least in Trump and Rubio's eyes, for going after him.
Hmm.
There's the issue with him being close to China, being very strong trading partners with them. Same thing with Russia, having a lot of these countries that are either within the sphere of influence of Russia or China, having close military coordination, buying oil from them as well. Trump actually recently let Chevron facilitate exports of Venezuelan oil outside of the country. So that was actually surprising. And that was probably due to Richard Grenell, who's another person involved with the entire Venezuela file. There was also a prisoner exchange between the United States and Venezuela recently. But what I'm trying to say in relation to fentanyl specifically is that the vast majority of cocaine, actually not fentanyl, but cocaine that comes into the United States is through a route that originates in Colombia and then it goes from the west, basically through the Pacific, not from the Atlantic or the Caribbean Sea, which is where Venezuela is located. So if we really want to get down to the bottom of the issue, then we need the same level of military accumulation and blockade on the western side of South America, where Colombia is located and where Panama is located, because that's where most of the drugs are coming from. They're also coming from Venezuela, but only about 250 tons per year, which is a lot when you think about it. That's
Yeah.
a lot to move through one country, but it's less than 10% of the total volume on the world stage. And it's only about 2% of the production that occurs in Venezuela, whereas about 84% occurs in Colombia or in Ecuador or in Peru or even in Brazil. Venezuela is actually very small in that regard because they don't have the coca crops needed to grow it. So sometimes it passes through there much less than Colombia. But Colombia is
Very,
an
very
American
smart
ally.
on drugs for some reason.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, we have to be more expansive than just this, but this is a good first step. I hope that it's not just geopolitics because I'm very
Yeah.
interested in stopping drugs. That's my main goal.
Good job. And also we see on the Pacific coast, kind of what I alluded to before, a lot of
Yeah.
Coast Guard action there, and that has been taking place for years now, but especially under the Trump administration, he has even ta had press conferences with Christy Nome and the Coast Guard to show their drug busts and everything. So obviously it's a part of his agenda, and that's a good thing. We want drugs off the streets. We want drugs to stop entering the United States. But liberals, yes, they're going to continue complaining until Trump actually. I don't know. What do you think Trump can do to make the liberals not complain? Like, what is one action? Like, I don't think there's anything that they would be happy with Trump, even if he, like, let's say, created world peace or ended world hunger. I don't think the liberals would be happy.
There's one thing I could think of if he were to reduce because right now marijuana is marked as a Schedule 1 drug, and liberals hate that because they're all potheads, right? So if he lowers it to like Schedule 5, I think they'd actually appreciate that on
Yeah,
a
I mean,
personal level.
I don't know. As someone again from New York, since they legalized marijuana, it's been disgusting. I just can't walk in New
Yeah.
York City. It smells disgusting. You smell it everywhere. I don't like
So
it. Like it ruins your quality of life.
yeah.
But okay. Anyway, Ofer,
Yeah.
I know this wasn't on our agenda, but I just wanted to bring it up because it just came to me. Now, I'm sure you're familiar, but I believe on Friday, Donald Trump issued a statement in which he said that Kamala Harris's Secret Service security is canceled. Now, we know that there's a little bit of a precedent to this. We saw that Richard Nixon, when
Yeah.
JFK won the election, immediately or almost immediately got his Secret Service taken away from him. But obviously, Kamala Harris being a figure right now, everyone knows who Kamala Harris is still. She obviously will have security concerns like anyone, and she should have some sort of security around her for safety concerns. But what do you think about this, taking away of her Secret Service, if that makes sense?
I guess it's probably due to the bad blood associated with the way in which the Secret Service handled Trump's assassination in 2024, the lack of guardrails, the complete and utter lack of preparedness for the force. They didn't set up a proper perimeter. They didn't have enough backup snipers. They didn't track the person in time. So yeah, probably they're trying to just have this complete shakeup over there in the agency, and they're also, I would say, holding a grudge against Biden, against Harris, against all these former officials that would constitute what Trump considers to be the deep states. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the California Highway Patrol are actually going to start taking care of her and protecting her, so she will still be subsidized. And regardless of that, even if she wasn't receiving any sort of government protection, I'm sure she has the wherewithal to fund it on her own. But yeah, I can understand the argument for why a government official, past or present, deserves the funding to ensure that nothing happens to them. That I suppose would come with a package of being a public servant that, yeah, you serve the people. Theoretically, that's not what happens most of the time, but in theory, that's what happens. And then in return, you receive all the benefits associated with that so you can continue doing your job or just live a
Yeah.
fulfilling life. But yeah, she'll be fine in the end. It's not the end of the world. It's not a huge deal.
Yeah, I don't think this is a big deal. The only thing that kind of strikes me is this is like Trump's character. Like Trump is very big on revenge. Like in general, like I think everyone understands this. He holds grudges against people who did him wrong in the past, which is understandable and which is something that I would do, something that probably everyone would do, but it's not being the bigger person at the end of the day. So when
Yeah.
he's removing Secret Service from Kamala Harris, I have no doubt in my mind that it's because he doesn't like Kamala Harris. It has nothing to do with like actual concerns of the Secret Service or anything. It's because he wants to show exactly how you said that, oh, look what you did in my Secret Service was horrible. So I'm gonna do this to you. So that's my issue with it. I don't actually like it. Do I think that this is like a specifically like a deal breaker or anything of substance? No. I think that this doesn't matter because as you mentioned, the California State Highway Patrol is going to be taking care of Kamala Harris, which is actually better for U.S. taxpayers because that means California is paying for it. And please continue paying for it, California. So
Yeah.
I'm actually happy about that. But definitely, I want to see I want to see less revenge being taken by Trump. I mean, I understand it's kind of his character to kind of like show others like oh it's like showing him like you took so much from me and now I'm going to take from you. That's what he's trying to do here. I don't like it very much. Similarly to how he is currently investigating like Adam Schiff or Letitia James for mortgage fraud. It's a little bit different there, but obviously those are politically motivated. Like you can't say that they're not. They would have never
Yeah,
come to the
obviously.
table. Yeah,
Yeah.
they would have never come to the table if they weren't Letitia James or Adam Schiff. So it does make a little bit of a difference since Letitia James is the Attorney General and she by itself has like has to uphold more laws than let's say the normal citizen because it would be much worse for a person in power to break a law than it would be for some normal citizen. But still, overall, it's a little bit of a revenge thing. I'm not a big fan of that. I would stay away for that. Um, but now moving on to a very interesting topic regarding the National Guard. So, just to give you a little bit of a rundown, this weekend we saw that Trump has numerously tried to threaten indirectly sending the National Guard to Chicago and other cities like New York. And also something that we have seen literally a few hours ago is that California, I believe it was Ninth Circuit of Appeals judge struck down the LA National Guard that were sent when Trump sent them against the ICE protests. So, Ofer, what are your
Yeah.
immediate thoughts, and what do you think about the judge's order in general?
Well, the logic is just that he didn't receive any sort of authorization from the governor to do so, and Trump, on his part, invoked the Insurrection Act, if I'm not mistaken. So that was his way of getting around it. So I don't understand the ruling. I don't agree with it. I think his name is Judge Beyer. So that
Yeah,
was his initiative.
Charles Byer, I
Yeah,
think.
Charles Beyer. Yeah. So he has a record of always stymieing Trump's agenda. So you have this like cast of characters in the lower courts that are always trying to stop it and drag it along and serve injunctions and such. So I think it's more of the same in that regard, and I hope it gets appealed. But it's already over, so the damage, quote unquote, it's not damage, it was positive in terms of its enforcement, is already done. And now we need to set a precedent that will allow Trump to continue invoking the Insurrection Act because in Illinois, in Maryland, in California again, in New York, and all of these Democrat-run states, even like Michigan, for instance, where you have major cities, it may be necessary if there won't be cooperation between the governors, whether it be in Westmore or Gretchen Whitmer or JB Pritzker, all of them, they're going to be hesitant to agree to any sort of cooperation to mobilize the National Guard and set it into their major cities, as we're seeing right now with Chicago, actually, with the mayor signing an executive order to bar any cooperation with the Metropolitan Police and federal law enforcement, whether it be ICE, DHS, Customs Border Protection, all of them, no cooperation. Have you heard of that? That's insane
This
because
is
they are
like
needed to work hand in hand to carry out deportation, stop drug smuggling. And he's timing that. He's putting his own residents at risk for political points and to grandstand. And frankly, it's pathetic. And so I really hope Trump makes use of the Insurrection Act whenever it's necessary. And that means there's going to have to be a legal aspect to this to try to fight back against these corrupt or just completely inept judges who are trying to impose political agendas on their practice. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And this is like this is ridiculous. We are having a city judge in our country being openly against cooperating with the federal authorities. I mean, look at the 10th Amendment. The 10th Amendment is clearly it says in writing that the states only have the authority that isn't given to the federal government. So this is a big 10th Amendment question, and this is actually what was discussed in the judge's ruling because the Trump team was arguing that the 10th Amendment was being violated with the protests, uh, ICE raids that were being, not actually carried out because of this in Los Angeles. So this is a similar discussion, and I want to see the National Guard in Chicago because number one, the situation in Chicago is horrible. There's so much crime. I believe this weekend over 7 people died from gunshots.
Yeah.
And Chicago is the number one city with the most gun control. So clearly that doesn't work. But I want to see real action being taken place because this is not a city that I would ever want to visit, at least from someone in a horrible city as well, New York, which is really not too much better. But really, what I want to see happening is cooperation between the states and Donald Trump because there's no reason that there shouldn't be. We interviewed Jim Walden, who is a centrist candidate, not even a Republican. He wanted even to cooperate with the Trump administration. So you would have to be really illogical not to cooperate with Trump. And that's what I'm seeing happen in Chicago and in all of these cities. But something else I wanted to bring up was the fact that in DC, these National Guard deployments have actually been working out very well. So we
Yeah.
have seen that crime significantly dropped. I think homicide dropped well to zero in the last however many days. So it's really wonderful to see. So what are your thoughts though on like the DC National Guard and their effects?
Mhm. Yeah, we've seen them deployed first and foremost to like the key government sites, and there's the most justification for that because you can say it's just protecting whatever's associated with the federal government. So next to the National Mall, there's all the famous photos over there. But even in some of the neighborhoods in DC, we've seen deployments. And yeah, they're not necessarily allowed to, the National Guard, especially in other cities, to act as law enforcement, but their mere presence is enough to disincentivize any crime. Nobody in their right mind is going to try to commit an armed robbery or a hijacking or a shooting of any sorts while there's an active group or an active garrison of hundreds of soldiers deployed over there. So as long as they're there, I think there's going to be a pretty significant decrease in crime. It might go up slightly as time goes on and as resources get shifted elsewhere, but this is amazing proof and an amazing way for Trump to showcase to the rest of the country that such actions can actually have a substantive difference and save the lives of dozens of people within, the span of a couple of weeks because, it's only been a week and a half or 2 weeks since this has gone into effect. And so in Chicago, for instance, they're not talking about a massive deployment of forces, they're talking about 200 for ICE, so they can go in there and conduct their immigration raids, which are extremely necessary. They haven't done it
So
to,
like for reference, 200 would probably be like
Mhm.
National Guard would be going with the ICE agents or
Yeah,
protecting them. So it seems as if they would provide security. It wouldn't be like 200
exactly.
just random because 200 is a very small number compared to
It is very small.
yeah. So, but continue. Sorry.
Yeah, we're looking at 200 not from ICE, and they have like a naval base that's set up outside of Chicago, and they're going to operate from there. And then an undisclosed amount of National Guard agents mobilized from other states as well that could come in there. I think so far for the entire country, 1,700 have been mobilized, and it's going to rise up more than that in the future. But some of them will be redirected to Chicago to help out, and they're important because they can do other jobs as well,
Yeah.
like registering people or getting DNA samples, and then ICE agents can go out onto the streets and just arrest people and execute warrants. So it does free up a lot of manpower. So even the mere presence, as we said with DC, of imagine National Guard agents standing in the center of Chicago, that's going to be a massive incentive for people to just stay away from crime. And, it's going to significantly decrease crime in the same way we talked about DC, murders going down, violent crime going down. I don't see any reason to oppose it if
Yeah.
you're acting in your residents' best interests.
Yeah, exactly. And the residents aren't even opposed to it. Talk to DC members.
Yeah.
Do you really think the DC members are going to tell you that, oh, I hate the police, the increase in police or the increase in the National Guard? No, of course not. And the biggest thing is that even if the National Guard are just there in presence, that means a lot because their presence provides safety and security, as you explained. So it's a big deal to have any of them walking through our streets. It has proven to work in DC with no surprise. I mean, who didn't expect it to work? But it also hopefully will be put in place in other big cities. Now to transition a little bit from the point on immigration, I just wanted to uh, ask you a few questions in relating to New York. So this weekend, as you know, I actually had the opportunity to go to a rally with some very important people and have speak there as well as have a debate with a few just people on the street there. So it was pretty fun. But really, there, what we discussed is the obviously the mayoral election that's coming up and how a lot of conservatives are giving up on New York City. Over from your perspective as someone outside of New York City, do you think that conservatives as a whole should be focused on this race, or should we just give up because it's not worth the amount of effort we're going to put into it?
No, conservatives should be focused on it. There's not much else to be focused on elections wise in 2025, right? The midterms are next year. And there's a very clear pathway to at least deny Mamdani in election victory by coalescing around one candidate or supporting anyone but Mamdani. It's certainly possible, and it's not going to be the best if Eric or if Cuomo wins or any of the other left-wing candidates make it there. If Adams is able to win re-election, it doesn't necessarily matter. It would still be a massive benefit in relation to Mamdani winning. So yeah, I'm really supportive of what you and Straka are doing over there, consistently going out and talking to the voters, explaining why his initiatives simply don't correspond with reality. I think that there is a very clear path to victory for any other candidates, and we should be encouraging, a coalescence. It's not going to happen, unfortunately, and that may be the reason why Mamdani wins. But if he ends up losing, then I could say that in part it's due to activism, people on the ground that are grassroots and trying to mobilize people that perhaps aren't registered Democrats, people that maybe they lean leftwards on the political spectrum, but they're not registered, they're not politically active. Maybe if some of them are mobilized, a couple 100,000, they could actually shift the results of the election.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think that it goes without saying we need this to be a one-to-one race. We can't have candidates like Sliwa or Adams in this race because they're not winning. There's no way Sliwa, a Republican mayor, is going to win the mayoral election. And if he did, I would be very, very surprised, and I would be clapping for him. I would be his first supporter, but it's not going to happen. It's common sense. It won't happen. I think Ofer, you also know it won't happen. So we needed to somehow convince them to drop out of the race. I don't think Sliwa wants to drop out. I don't think he will drop out, nor do I think that Adams is going to drop out. But the only way we could possibly win is if they do, because the supporters of those candidates will have to vote for Cuomo.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They're individuals with, strong characters. They're vindictive, you could say, and I don't say that in any sort of begrudging way. It's just like a descriptive analysis of their behavior. And, you look at it, New York has been trending right leaning, especially in terms of presidential elections, going from like plus 23 to plus 16. That's a major drop in terms of Democrat support. in the presidential election cycle. Lee Zeldin
Oh yeah,
having
that was
a
one.
really successful challenge as well. That was incredible. So there's precedent for Republicans to improve their standing, and that actually will continue to trend that way within the next 20 years. I think it's going to sort of mimic the same politics of a state, say like Virginia right now, or New Mexico or Colorado, where they're like plus 10 Democrat, plus 8 Democrats. Like it's trending in that direction, definitely. So
Yeah.
there is hope for New York.
Yeah, definitely. And we have Kathy Hochul, who is probably the worst governor who we ever have saw in our lifetime. And when she's ruining, very obviously ruining the city, ruining the state, and spending, I'm just going to bring it up again, $42,000 per student, and our education is absolute crap. When we have something like that going on, then yes, New Yorkers are going to change. But also, we have seen a concerning amount of New Yorkers fleeing the city and the state to go to places like Florida, which provide much more incentives to move to, and also because it's just a nicer place to live. So we will have to see if we will have a influx or a deflux of conservatives in New York, because we need conservative voters to stay, and realistically, they may not be. So New York, as well as New Jersey, New Jersey is also really, really turning almost like it's almost becoming a swing state, especially in
Yeah.
upcoming elections. If you looked at the electoral map and specifically New Jersey, you would have seen that like they won. Democrats won by, I think it was less than like 10%. So it's very possible for all of these states, but that's what I want to see. So to transition to our last and final topic, which is actually a situation of an article that I wrote, and a situation that probably everyone, all of our viewers have heard of, which is Guatemalan children being denied the ability to go back to their homeland because of a Democrat judge who said that he was not sure that actually these children should go back. So, Ofer, why don't you give me a little bit of a rundown of your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so in the ballpark of 600 children were unaccompanied, meaning they were separated from their families when they were admitted across the border by Customs and Border Protection, where they're currently being housed within these shelters. And the conditions are horrible, just like squalid, rancid conditions. All in all, when you add up all the people that are in these camps, not just the unaccompanied children from Guatemala, it's like 86,000 something in that ballpark. So just completely mismanaged. And they're in a state of limbo where the taxpayers are funding their, meager support, subsistence level supports. So it's bad for everybody, frankly. It's bad for the people that are on the border because they aren't focused on other issues like enforcement or, going into the cities and arresting people. And it's bad for the people that are there because they're stuck in limbo and the conditions are pretty bad. It's bad for the families that, have their relatives stuck there because, they want to be reunited, especially in the case that you wrote in your article about, where you had these families that were already located based in Guatemala. They're not even based in the United States. So why would you want to stop the flights of the children back to Guatemala where they can be reunited with their families? I don't understand that. The only reason to do so would be to try to force a scenario where the families from Guatemala could also come to the United States and they could all be reunited there, which is just completely anti-American. It's against our interests. People should be reunited together in their home countries, not in the United States. We're not a charity. We're not a breeding ground for other people to come in and take advantage of us.
Yeah.
And these activist judges, we talked about before with the LA ruling, just completely out of order.
Yeah, definitely. And to, add on, you pretty much summed it up, but it just from the moral standpoint, denying children the ability to go back to their homeland and go back to their parents, because their parents and the Guatemalan government have restated that they want their children back. So that's a big concern too. Like these children are being stranded in a place where they have no one. And I guess the Democrats are okay with that, which is very concerning for me. So, I want to see how this plays out. I'm almost positive that Trump is going to find a way to bring them back to the Guatemalan government, because there's no way that they're going to just stay here. It's going to end up being very bad. So, in general, though, I want to see how this plays out, because it would be very interesting to see if this order would actually stick in an appeals court, because I doubt it would. I don't know. It just doesn't, it seems crazy to
Yeah.
me. So yeah, I think that's it for today's episode on the Patriot
Mhm.
perspective. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
taking a listen and yeah, Ofer, any final words?
Yeah, thank you all. Now that we're back from short hiatus, we're going to be uploading a lot. I think you guys are going to be very excited.
Yes, we have some very interesting guests coming up, so thank you very much. Uh, Thank you and see you next time on the Patriot Perspective. Oh, okay.